Okay, here we go. These are the subjects that we are discussing today. 2 minutes on each one with Tom, Shirley and Dave. And first up, it's the Royal owners having a horse in training with Willie Mullins. Who would like to start me on this? Shirley, would you like to start?
Go for it.
Why Willie Mullins?
I mean,
isn't it obvious?
Why Willie Mullins? Because, obviously he's a genius. So, I mean, it's fantastic that they are having a horse, more horses, we want to see it. So if it's Willie Mullins, fabulous. Obviously it'd be great, hopefully in time, maybe a few of our, trainers over here too. Maybe the chap in second who has been trying to win the championship twice, Dan Skelton, why not? But if money was unlimited, wouldn't we all want a horse with Willie Mullins? And what he can do is just, he's a genius. He's a genius.
Yeah,
it provoked quite an interesting response from Eve Johnson-Horton.
Yeah, it did. Eve said, couldn't they have chosen another trainer in Britain? And I have sympathy with that. I must admit that it's very interesting because when the late Queen Elizabeth died in September 2022, the idea was that, Prince Charles, as he was then, King Charles III now, not being a massively public racing fan, would perhaps not take, would scale back. Obviously, we know that Queen Camilla is a massive racing fan. So it's interesting that hasn't happened because they've actually expanded their borders. Obviously, we don't have to go back too far before the Queen's work to repair relations between the UK and Ireland and the horse racing communities in that as well. I wonder whether they could have found another trainer in Britain to say, do you want this horse called Reaching High? He's got a BHA rating of 92 and he won a 1.6 mile race at Wolverhampton. He's probably quite an interesting horse to go hurdling with, rather than follow that really well-trodden path to County Carlow.
Maybe they're watching Polly Ross and they thought, want a bit of it.
Are you allowed to have a view on this, or are you going to go to the Tower?
I think for trainers, likewise jockeys, training, riding with the Royal Silks on is one of the most sort of privileged and honourable things you can do as a jockey trainer. Willie was champion trainer in Britain this year.
Twice.
Yeah, twice. He's champion trainer in Britain.
Yeah.
I know he's not based in Britain. I very much understand Eve's point. And yeah, if I was a trainer, which I'm never going to be, one of the things that I would target upon my career would be to have a royal horse in the stable.
Let's ask you about the next topic. You can kick us off on this. The French 1,000 guineas, She Special, crossed the line in front. The race was awarded to Zadagana. Mikel Barcelona aboard. Was it the right... Did the stewards come to the right decision in the end?
Personally, when I watched the side-on, I didn't actually think anything had happened. I saw the head-on once it started coming out, and before I'd heard whether the appeal had, whether the stewards had turned it round or not, I presumed that they would do. France being France, and even potentially in England, it might have been turned round. The winner went down, the second horse, eventual winner, went down a nose, and her run did get impeded. I personally think she was the rightful winner. In that, would she have been beaten if that didn't take place? No, she would have won. Obviously it's heartbreaking for Connections, and she's a very good filly, the second, but had that not have happened, she would have been beat. So therefore, you now have what would have been the rightful winner of the race. I personally...
What did you think of Mikel Barcelona using his hand?
Look, interpret the rules however you may. If the rule states strikes of the whip, it's strikes of the whip. Strikes of the hand is something something else. Motorsport is renowned. Anyone that watches motorsport, it's every loophole, every single fine margin advantage you can take, you take. And look, whether Mikel knew that was a rule or not, doesn't really matter because he did it. He's done it now. But loopholes are loopholes, and the now second will feel very hard done by if it doesn't get turned round with both circumstances. But that sport and the rule book is the rule book.
Dave, Shirley, do you have views on the result and the potential, or the appeal, and the potential result of the appeal?
I think Tom's pretty much summed it up. I'd be with you. I'd be in your camp.
It's very interesting to see how they get on. That's the rule that's the line they're going down, is the strikes with the hand, not the interference. I feel desperately sorry for them. I thought, it looked like an amazing day, and obviously, Kieran Schumacher to end a really difficult week on a high would have been fantastic. And I don't think it was by any means an unreasonable decision by the stewards for all that the interference took place away out. But we'll see how they get on.
Next topic, Dave. There are not quite a proliferation of winning your in races for a variety of big races through the season, both here and abroad, but in particular focusing on the R.
Yeah, it was just interesting that last weekend France Gallo unveiled a series of win and you're in races for the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, and it sort of broadened. We talked earlier about geldings in the Arc, and just about how in sort of modern times we do have to reconsider sort of old rules about how we go about things. Geldings, obviously, I don't agree with, but that basically France Gallo have smoothed the path towards the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe. None of these races were in Britain, which I thought was interesting. Perhaps the line of thinking is that the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe in the last few years has been perhaps too happy a hunting ground for horses that are trained in Britain, and perhaps this is some way of encouraging or helping the home team towards keeping that prize in France. But it also sort of made me think about win and you're in races elsewhere. We've talked about the Grand National in the past, where obviously a very, very different race, the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe, but whether that concept of win and you're in races is something that we should be embracing a bit more.
I was actually in Nashville last week for the Iroquois steeplechase, and the Jockey Club were over there at Woolston for Cheltenham. So if you win the Iroquois, you've got an entry straight. You're a win and you're in for a big race at Cheltenham. So I think it's great to get the appeal of the international market over to here or to France. So I can't see them as a negative.
I think, Tom, it's quite a good idea to try and ensure, if you can, that the horses that win recognised races for big races, the end of a particular season, end up there, isn't it? Good idea overall?
Yeah, 100%. It's people's own prerogative as to whether they decide to go there or not. Yeah. At the end of the day, like I remember last year, Makarova winning the Abbey. She was winning her into the Breeders' Cup. She didn't go. Yeah. Like it's not, you don't have to take it up.
But it encourages.
But it encourages it, and to be honest, every now and again, it's probably going to put someone on that path that might not have been thinking down that way, and they might just change their mind instead. And look, we're not talking about an unattractive race either. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's a big deal, and one that should be a target for horses winning those calibre of races. But I see no negative.
I just wonder also with middle distance races, what we want, isn't it, is middle distance races to be contested like sprint races are, where they're won by often people that you wouldn't necessarily have heard of as massive players in the industry, and it's so much harder for those for people who own middle distance horses. It's a more expensive game. You're up against the real powerhouses in global racing, aren't you? And in that sense, if it does smooth the path of people who are outside that elite bracket, then it's a good thing.
The teams for the Shergar Cup have been rejigged. There is no longer a female riders team. I think female riders might get into the other teams. What's been the reaction to that amongst the riders, Tom?
I mean, look, I can't say I've spoken to everybody about it, but I've obviously spoken to Holly about it, and I mean, we both. It's great. It reflects the racing industry now. Like, females are not They don't have to stand in their own corner and be together anymore. They are very much individuals that have made it to the top of the game. Rachel, Hayley, Holly, people like that. Why should there be a girls' team and make it as a billing against the men? Racing for females is a level playing field. Holly has battered her way into the league that she's in by being amongst the men and gaining the respect from the results that she's got. And personally, I think the Shergar Cup has done a great job of taking that initiative to saying, actually, we want to reflect the broader racing industry and where female jockeys are at. And that is, they're on a world stage at that level. So they should be there in their own right as a jockey within a team, not just there because there's a female team. I personally think it's great. I know Holly really agrees with it, and I think she was part of the discussion about it as well. I think it's great.
Shirley?
We should be so proud that, in our industry, that everybody's on a level playing field. That's, I beat the drum about this all the time, that, we're all equal. It doesn't matter. I mean, mine's different. I'm an auctioneer, so it's like it doesn't matter if I'm male or female. Like there's no views, no negativity towards it. So I think it's a fantastic thing.
It's different, but it's the same really. In reality, it's I know we're competing on a physical level, and yours is about it's not physicality, but it doesn't really matter. No. I think that's the point. The Shergar Cup is actually going to reflect the whole racing industry as it is.
Apparently, they're going to put together a team of geldings for the Shergar Cup.
There's not many gelded jockeys.
Probably should be a few more. I'm just winding you up. But I'll come to you on the next particular talking point, Dave. The levy. The levy yield is up. Turnover, though, is down.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, this. Believe me, bear with us. The first thing, of course, is that the levy is calculated on profit, not turnover, a win, as people sometimes say. And so the Cheltenham Festival, which was very much a 4 days of upsets, wasn't it? It was a wonderful meeting from that point of view. Remember, it started with the champion hurdle, then you had defeats for likes of Galopin Des Champs, John Bon, Tiapu. That this has contributed to an increase to 108 million for the year ending March the 31st. The forecast was for 100 million. Now, obviously, in the short term, that's great news, but the very worrying trend is with regard to the decrease in turnover, an annual drop of 8% on turnover and 19% since 21 to 22, according to the Levy Board. I'll just read you the quote from Anne Lambert, who's the interim chair of the Levy Board. A yield of around 108 million provides additional reassurance for the board in considering spending decisions for 2026, with increases in for 2025 already having been agreed. The board's cash position is currently healthy, and we will be looking to make additional funds available next year, including for prize money. However, and this is the bad bit, however, we will exercise appropriate prudence in expenditure decisions and maintain sufficient reserves as bookmakers' increased profits are being generated from falling turnover. It remains to be seen whether this trend will continue in the longer term. So, great news in the short term, that the upsets at Cheltenham, and it could go the other way, because if you have hunter-friendly Cheltenham, then of course the figure isn't quite so rosy. But the headline figure really is just the decrease in turnover, because through essentially through affordability checks, restrictions on accounts, the increase in trade on the black market, that is having a 19% over 3 years is really quite astounding.
Well, I was going to say those alarm bells have been ringing for some time with regards to turnover and racing's share of the market. Moving on, and the next topic, speaking of alarm bells, I mean, the alarm bells about Constitution Hill have been ringing for some time this season, Shirley. He was taken out of the Gold Cup at Ascot, unsurprisingly. What do you think the future is for a once shining star of National Hunt racing?
I mean, everything is done. You can't take it away from him. Obviously, this season hasn't quite gone to plan. But if you look at what he's done previously, he's not. We can't just completely write the poor lad off. He is a horse that I know. Every time I've watched him, he actually, my insides like just go, I kind of, because he just, the way he just makes the stride, or he goes over a fence, he just does enough. I don't know. It's hard to say. You just want for the whole team for him to come out next season. I'm a dreamer, so I believe these things. Positive vibes. These things may change, and maybe he'll come out next season a different animal. But it's unlikely at the stage, is it? I don't know. I don't know. I'm sad about it because I didn't even watch him in Punchestown. I couldn't because I don't want to.
His win in the Supreme is one of the best performances
ever
in Cheltenham Festival history. But when you watch how he races now, it is sad to a degree to see him a shadow of his once confident, smooth, slick self. I mean, what are your observations, Tom? Do you have many thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've never ridden in a jumps race, but I can only imagine what it's like from watching and having ridden on the flat. Like, horses gain and lose confidence. Like, when they're that good, and he looked that good before. Confidence sky high. He looked phenomenal. Everybody had complete confidence in him as well. Like I say, he was slick. Like you never know. As a non-jumping person, completely. Like I understand it a bit, but not fully. Like I never watched him and went and winced until he fell, and then everybody's confidence is knocked back slightly. His is too, and. It must be like any elite athlete. The confidence starts going, and then that affects the performance. Like, he's going to be turned out into a field. Hopefully he comes back at the start next year, forgets about it all, and he comes back as slick, shining self.
Like, I've been into Seven Barrows many a time, and, to see him, like, he's such a plain horse. Like, he's a real plain individual who is just a real, like, he looks like a riding school horse. Like, he's just a real, like, very, very genuine, clearly. So you'd hope maybe if he can just have a nice summer off and something, it just needs that confidence back, as you say. But
one of the biggest challenges of Nicky Henderson's stellar training career would be to get Constitution Hill back to something Nike. I mean, Sprinter Sacre, he bounced back and won the Queen, so wouldn't write Nicky Henderson off.
If anyone can, Nicky can.
Moving on, as we must do, and field sizes. Of course, this is in keeping with some of the other topics we're talking about, the levy, tax rates, etc. I'll start with you on this, Tom, because you actually talked about this earlier, about the effect of field sizes with regards to jockeys and the one meeting rule. You said when COVID, 9 races, big fields, you actually had lots of opportunities, but field sizes affect you guys as much as anyone else.
Yeah, massively so. To be honest, I don't think there's anybody in the industry that field sizes doesn't affect. Obviously, it affects betting turnover, punters, trainers, jockeys. It's a big problem. We all want competitive races. As a jockey, is it easier to steal 1 round in a 4 in a race that's 1-4 on? Yes, of course it is. Than trying to negotiate your way through 25. But it doesn't mean it's good at all. Quite the opposite. We want competitive racing, and it's the way racing should be. And we're in a bit of trouble with it at the moment, for sure. What brings us back on track? I think anybody can look at racing and say there's just too much racing. We're diluting. It's a diluted product, and by diluting the product, it means you thin the fields out, which is in turn what's happened. It's a simple equation, but how you rectify that is a bit more complicated. I understand that, we all do, but
Tom's been singing from the same hymn sheet that many people have, saying too much racing, inevitably field sizes are going to be affected because of that, Dave.
Yeah, and there was a report this week about the worrying and probably unsustainable level of field sizes over jumps last season. A part of that was caused by a pretty dry winter. You know, I think that we've been used, certainly I've been used to looking at the Cheltenham Festival when the sun comes out and a raft of form going back to October that's just on hock-deep ground, and that wasn't the case this year. That had certainly its influence on bringing field sizes down. But as Tom says, you know, I think that the BHA have addressed the size of the fixture list, but I think in the view of many, the cuts that were made weren't swinging enough, and that at the moment with the horse population that we've got, that those fixtures need to come down in number.
Negligible, the cuts made to the fixture list, really. In reality, it's just very hard to have a significant impact with what's been done. Last subject on talking points for this week, and that is tax rates on gambling. And again, this is in relation to affordability checks and where the future lies for the sport of racing in comparison to online casino, etc. Dave.
Yeah, another industry one, but there was a meeting on Wednesday of senior figures in British racing to address the concerns to the Treasury's consultation on online gambling duties. Now, as things currently stand, betting on racing is levied at 15%. That's known as the general betting duty. This is online. And the betting on roulette and bingo is 21%. Now, there have been calls for the latter to be doubled to 42%, but also the under consideration is a harmonisation of the two figures. So it doesn't take Carol Vorderman to work out that if you're harmonising 21% and 15%, then the duty on horse racing is going to go up. Martin Carruthers said, of the chief executive of Arena Racing, I think there is a strong argument that UK horse racing is taxed and treated differently from all other products because of the thoroughbreds' contribution to hundreds of livelihoods and communities, and horse racing's unique symbiotic relationship in the world with the betting industry. So once again, as we were talking about punters going to the black market, if there is an increase or a harmonisation between the 15 and the 21%, that cost will be passed on to bookmakers. That will mean worse value in terms of prices. It will mean probably less promotion, less marketing in terms of horse racing too. It will make horse racing a much less attractive product, and as a result, those costs will be passed on to punters, and
of course,
with consequences for the finances of the sport.
And we are actually going to be speaking to Lee Keys from the Bar Stewards, who was actually at that meeting in Westminster to hopefully shed a bit of light on what he presented and what was discussed at Westminster. That has been this week's Talking Points.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.